Good morning, everyone. It's 9:30, so we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to the December 21st, 2017 meeting of the Downtown Design Review Committee. First order of business, as always, please make sure your cell phones are either turned off or in the silent mode, and we'll start with roll.
Corey Bates.
Present.
Nathaniel Harding. Charles Ainsworth.
Present.
Anthony Black.
Present.
Julie Kriegel.
Present.
Deborah Richards. And Connie Scothorn. Present. You have a quorum.
Thank you. I do want to make an announcement that based on the holiday schedule, there is a meeting in this room at 11 o'clock. So we do have that time constraint that we're working up against. Is there anyone on the committee that has a time constraint more restrictive than that? Is there anyone on the committee that has any potential abstentions?
I'm going to make just one note. I don't anticipate this being a conflict. I am the leasing broker for the building at 100 Park Avenue, which is just north of what we're going to be discussing today. Again, I don't see it as a conflict, but I'll go ahead and mention that.
Great. Thank you. I assume everyone's had a chance to review the minutes from last meeting. Do we have any comments or a motion?
I'll move to approve. Second.
That was a Blatt Ainsworth motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We have no cases withdrawn. We have no continuance requests. We have no items on the consent docket. We'll move into cases for individual consideration. The first and only item is 120 North Robinson Avenue. Is the applicant present?
First, let me clarify that, yes, this is on the agenda for demolition, but this is only for demolishing the newest piece, the First National, not what's known as the 31 building. We tried to clarify that in the staff report. A lot of you have been following this project, and they've gotten started with interior work, and so now they're having to get started on the exterior work. So the newest piece of the building, which we refer to as the 72 or the 1972, is what's before you today for demolition. They're needing to install ramps for the parking garage that they're constructing inside, more internal to the site. So if you haven't been out there lately, hopefully these slides helped you show you what's going on around it. As you can see, the 72 building looks dramatically different than the original building from 1931. We're going to get, I believe, an update on the project itself that you haven't heard yet, which will be very exciting for all of us here. The demolition criteria that we have has one caveat. It's guidelines. And so what we've included in our discussion in the staff report are those we felt were important items to point out, to discuss. One of the things is they do have a proposal for reconstruction, which is also before you today, which is very helpful when you're considering demolition as well as the reconstruction at the same time. We've run into that with some other projects. So let me get down to the proposal. So as you can see here, what we're dealing with the demolition is what's known as C. The A is the 1931 building, and the C is the 1972 building. They are needing the parking to make all of the combination of uses that they're putting in this mixed-use project work. The issues that staff had when we looked at this dealt with impact on the sidewalk area. You will notice that we had a concern and we have a condition in here. We've been able to confirm that we really don't need that condition. The design that they're doing will allow the sidewalk to continue across the entrance and exits from that the parking garage area. And so staff is recommending that we don't need to have that condition as part of your approval on this project. There are other areas we talk about in here. They're demolishing some of the sidewalks. They're going to be redoing the streetscape. We're going to be getting some new street trees. There's going to be an area on the north where there's going to be a drop-off area, but they're working out the details on all of that to make this project work. Staff is recommending approval at this point without any conditions. And there was a lot of information for you to look at, and let me get to this so you can clearly see what we're dealing with here. They're also having to do some modifications to put openings, removing some windows, cutting some new openings, more on the alley side for ventilation that they need for the parking garage portion of this project. So if you have any questions, I would be glad to answer it, or we could just go right to what everybody really wants to hear, which is the presentation on the project itself.
Does anyone have any questions for staff? Yeah, let's go ahead. If you could state your name and address for the record.
Good morning. My name is Gary Brooks, 2217 Lone Oak Way. I am the proud owner of First National Center. It's taken us a long time to get here. I'll explain the backstory to you. Since you're all involved in real estate, some of you full-time, and so I think you'd enjoy understanding maybe the process that took us to get here. People have called me, fortunately not with death threats, and when you mention demolition and First National in the same sentence, that can really get confusing. And so, I wasn't willing to come to you with a demolition plan until we had a construction plan. I just didn't think that that's something we wanted to put out in the city. So it's one of the reasons it took a while. Our original plan, which is similar to what a lot of people over the years have considered, was to knock down the 1957 building and the 1972 structure and rebuild a retail plaza, a parking garage, exactly the way we wanted it. Unfortunately, I had never done a historical project, so I was naive to the way the National Park Service works in this situation. And we actually moved forward with Walter P. Moore, our engineer on the garage, to demolish and begin to rebuild a new structure. My first meeting about 2 months after we executed the contract in January with SHPO, the arm of the National Park Service here in Oklahoma City, they made it very clear to me that was not going to happen, that they considered the center building, a 200,000 square foot addition, to be what they call a contributing factor. Now, all of you probably know what that means. I did not know what that means. So I called Chuck Wiggin and I said, Chuck, what does a contributing factor mean? He said, it means you're not knocking that building down. So that became a problem because Walter P. Moore said, look, you got two options. You can engage us to see if there's a way to figure out how to bring parking in off of Park Avenue into a garage, a component from Park Avenue, or we can try to come off of Broadway. I wasn't willing to do it off Park Avenue and told my partner if our only option is to bring 700 cars in and out a day from Park Avenue, I think we need to terminate our contract and walk. He agreed, and so we instructed Walter P. Moore to attempt to try to figure out how to build a ramping system to accommodate the garage using the existing structures of the two buildings. And they came back about 5 weeks later and said, it's not possible. We need to tear down a portion of that building. So it gets more complicated, because now that I have to keep the existing structures, we lost about 31% parking efficiency, and we had to maintain all the historical pieces of the center building, which ended up not being a bad thing. The elevator bank there in that 57 building, most of you are very familiar with, is very attractive, and we were able to incorporate that in. But economically, it became a big challenge for us, losing all of those parking spaces from a valuation standpoint. More important, I had to have the National Park Service's approval that the 1972 building would not be considered a contributing factor. And I told them in Washington, I said, I've got to have that before closing, because if I don't, I've got to terminate. I can't not have parking that I'm controlling at the price point that we're going to have in this hotel and these apartments. We received that approval from the National Park Service about 3 days before scheduled closing. So we now knew that we could come to you and present a plan that you have seen and we're going to talk about today, which tears down a portion, the easternmost portion of the 1972 leg, which is what you see here in front of you. ADG and J.C. Witcher's here to give you more specifics. Some of you will have some questions about how the ramping system works. But what this does is it allows us to move traffic in off of Broadway, down that alley, which would be the only place that we will allow moving trucks, people moving in and out of apartments. We'll have possibly 7 to 8 bars and restaurants. You're accommodating a 145-room hotel. You can imagine the amount of traffic that will come in and out of this garage. So we've really tightened up the development piece. I'm very happy with the plan that we're presenting to you, and hopefully you find it acceptable. I'll let JC give you some more specifics, and then I'll be available for any questions.
J.C. Witcher, ADG, 920 West Main here in the city. Laura, can I borrow the mouse? Yeah, that's what I'd like. So Laura and Gary both talked about what we are. I'm sorry, dear. All right. I'd like to just reiterate and walk through what we're not demolishing, because I think we just want to make that really, really clear. Okay. So, we all know First National. Can I thumb through these here? Or I'll go back here. So you're familiar with the existing building, and we're restoring and cleaning up, and we're doing the repairs we need to on the existing building, the 1931 building. And then even the, Laura mentioned the 1957. In this photo right here, on the right side of this photo is the 1957 building. And this part, I'm showing this because it's part of the 1972 building. It was designed to be very consistent with the 1957 building, and we're preserving that. The portion of the 1972 building that we're demolishing is, as Laura noted and the staff report notes, is this portion that faces out to Broadway, that does not look like the portion of the 72 building that presents to Park Avenue. And hide that one for a moment and see if I can get to my graphic that shows, So this is a really clear graphic that indicates exactly what's being demolished to make way for these ramps at an expansion joint here. So it's a little bit less than half of the 1972 building. It doesn't affect any of how it presents out to Park Avenue, which was an important thing for us to preserve for that architectural consistency along Park Avenue and maintaining everything that the National Park Service felt like was a contributing factor. So this portion is demolished. We replace it with ramps, as is noted in the plans in the staff report, that get us access to parking in the basement and parking on levels 3 through 14 in the existing 72 and 57 building. And then the images of, knock some of these down here and see if I can find everything that I'm looking for. Been through that one. Up. Here we are. So Laura mentioned in the staff report replacing, and we're really pleased to be able to present the design that we're going to be moving forward with to present back out to Broadway. And you can see that it has, it's more consistent with what's on Park Avenue than what was there before. And the design seeks to be a good neighbor to the adjoining spaces, and especially the Cotter Ranch Tower across the street. So we feel like it's compatible with the streetscape, It does a good job of screening, not hiding the fact that it's a parking garage, but dealing with it in an effective way that doesn't beat you over the head with the fact that it's a parking garage. There's that's the bulk of what I can share with you. Some other images, a little bit different attitudes. I'll note that we're not seeking to get any approval. We'll submit the signage later. So the signage you see is kind of a placeholder to let you know that there will be signage there, but we'll apply for the signage permit at a later time as the design gets more flanged up. You can see the entry, and we have solved the issue of the continuous sidewalk. The Project 180 standards are going to be observed, complied with. In the staff report, it mentions treescapes and landscaping along Park Avenue and Robinson, and there's already P180 work that's done there, and that'll be carefully pulled up or protected, and then put back in place. We've even stipulated that if, while they're being stored, the trees that we salvage die, that we replace with trees that match what's on the other side of Park Avenue as part of P180. So I think it's straightforward, simple. We've got a good cohesive design. It's cohesive with what presents on Park Avenue, but also addresses the new parts of P180 and those things we do for accessibility, such as continuous sidewalk. And like Gary, I'll take any questions that you have.
Before we get into questions and discussion, Laura, maybe you can help me. I think it's worth just restating or clarifying what the committee is voting on today. I think the project is big enough and has a number of components to it that it's worth just redefining what we're voting on today, and then potentially what would come to us later on down the road.
Okay. So on page 1 of the staff report, because I tried to highlight all those items, one deals with the demolition, and as J.C. was showing you the pieces of the building that are being demolished. In addition to sidewalk, streetscape, as well as he discussed that, and I had those listed as well, there are portions of the south wall, more down into the alley, that they're demolishing windows, leaving the openings, and adding openings for the ventilation that they need for the parking garages. You're also looking at the construction of the new 14-story building, which you're looking at here, which will provide the ramps to get into the parking garage that they're creating further back in the project.
So just to clarify, the submission of this new design is not only to show us what would go in place of the demolition, but we are actually reviewing the design of this future building as well.
Correct.
Okay.
And as well as the reinstallation of the streetscape that J.C. mentioned. I included in the staff report that there might be additional pieces later that come back to you for work that they're doing. I don't know if there's going to be anything on the 1931 building that they're going to be doing on the outside that you might have to see, but that's possible, or even the 57 building, but there could be other pieces. Most of what they've been doing to date has all been internal.
And that's actually one area, the north elevations of the 57 building and the 72 building that are on Park Avenue. There is some scope that is included in the drawings that we received as far as window restoration and tacking windows open. I want to confirm how much of the scope of those north elevations of those two buildings are part of this application versus something we would see down the road.
Okay.
Right. Actually, real quick, there is a lot of maintenance and repair on the 57 and 32 buildings that is not recorded as part of your scope because maintenance and repointing, resealing, all that kind of stuff doesn't require a CA. So it's shown on some of the drawings for information, but it's not included as part of your action items.
What I was going to say, our scope for those elevations is to repair glass that's broken, do seal up curtain wall, clean, do any repairs that we need to do. There's some stone that's had some degradation over time, and take care of those things. But it is maintenance and upkeep type work.
And there's, I believe, JC, there's nothing we anticipate for the 32 exterior ever coming. And on the 57, there might be some miscellaneous tenant entrances.
Yeah, on the 1931 building, and Gary just reminded lighting, there will be a new exterior lighting system in roughly the location of the existing systems. But as far as the 1931 building, it will be restoration. It will be a masonry restoration and window restoration.
Because the windows aren't being replaced. They're
The windows are not being replaced.
repainted and
Now, we are developing designs for dog park and pool deck that will effectively be on the roof of the 14th floor of the 1931 building. And we will need to bring those to you at some point as those designs get solidified. We're under the restrictions or the design guidelines of the National Park Service on how apparent those are, how apparent they aren't from Park Avenue.
Okay, thank you. Does the committee have any questions for the applicant?
I kind of would like to hear about the materials in the front of the building. It looks like it's glass.
Yes. Connie, primarily it's a glass curtain wall, kind of modified storefront curtain wall system. So it's a combination of glass and a spandrel panel, a metal spandrel panel, and then an accent that is in a color. It's a composite metal panel, that accent band that frames the elevation. It's a composite metal panel that we're selecting a color that is similar to a limestone, so that we're compatible with Bank First and 100 Park. And if you'd like to see them, I know samples can get to be cumbersome, but I brought them, if you'd like to see it.
So then the alley side is just going to be clear?
The alley side, where it's brick, it'll stay brick. Where we need to do repairs on what's essentially a gunite or kind of a shotcrete system in the 1957 building, we'll do that with an uninsulated EIFS system or plaster. So it'll look, with the exception of the new openings that we're putting in to achieve the code-required open garage, it'll look essentially like it does now. And it's still hard to see from the street. You've got to, you can see it from the top of Main Street parking garage, but that's about it.
And then at ground level, there's some stone, is that correct?
At ground level on the parking garage entry, we're going to use a composite metal panel.
Okay.
We did have to make that adjustment from what was originally submitted in our packet.
Okay.
That was noted as stone, and we have adjusted that to the composite metal panel.
And then do you have any thoughts on the glass itself? And I ask in relation to really at night, what the appearance of the building will be with the lighting in the garage and.
Right. This is the glass. I don't know if this will help, but I think it'll present as effectively clear, with light behind it at night. I don't know if that helps give an idea in this lighting. I think one of my other images kind of shows it a dusk shot. I think to the casual observer or driving by, you won't necessarily notice the ramp system, but if you study it, you'll be able to see the ramp system through the glass.
One,
Cars that actually park in that area.
True.
So it's purely a ramp. All the parking and the vehicles and lights would be farther west into the actual garage itself.
So what's the material on the south? I mean, is that
Chuck, there is, in the new part of the ramp system, yes, it's post-tension concrete, but it will be exposed. After we get around a certain dimension, in the existing building now, there's the travertine that wraps the corner. We're going to go that same distance, and then we'll have the exposed ramp system visible.
what about the balance of the center building?
Chuck.
What about the balance of the center building? Sorry.
On the south side, Chuck,
Right.
it's brick now, and it'll stay brick. It will change because existing openings are getting larger for the open parking garage.
Okay.
Meet those areas, but it's brick now, and it'll remain brick.
Got it.
I might discuss the timing just because we haven't talked about it.
Please.
One of the reasons it's taken us so long to get here is we've got a pretty serious asbestos and interior demolition work being done. We've contracted for about 216,000 man-hours before we can actually begin construction. It's just the work that has to take place inside the building to prepare it for us to start construction. We have completely demolished the interior and completed asbestos on 9 floors, with 2 more being done the next couple of weeks. So we're making really good progress. I would anticipate that we would begin dismantling this from the top down over a couple of month period, sometime by the end of March, early April. That looks like the time frame. When it comes down, we'll have a crane base that will be built in the basement, and it will remain there as part of the building once the crane's removed. Having very personal relationships with everyone who owns our offices in every building around me, we're very sensitive to traffic and, not blocking traffic and cutting off streets, because everybody has my mobile number and will be calling me if Beffert can't get people in his garage. So those are the kind of things we had to really think through and make sure that we're very, very cautious. It is right in the middle of town. It's going to be a disruption. Obviously, we're going to move as quick as we can, but it's a 1.1 million square foot project with a $235 million budget. So it's big, it's hard, it's challenging, and unfortunately, had the National Park Service let us go with our original plan, I wouldn't have lost 31% parks, and I might have been able to not do an open garage, but that was not an option for us once we ended up pricing it all out. It just became an incredible burden. But hopefully that gives you some idea of the time frame. I'm guessing that it's a 5 to 6 month process to construct this piece of it. We expect the garage to be fully open and operational May, June of 2019, which is about a year ahead of when we'll actually open the tower.
Will the project be applying for historic tax credits?
Absolutely.
Do you see any implications based on the recent tax reform as it addresses historic tax credits?
That's the $40 million question that people have asked me. My answer was simple. We hope to close the loan on the garage actually tomorrow. We have 9 lenders, about 1,400 documents for that closing, and that came up because we have historical tax credit buyers on that call as part of that process. And so about 3 weeks ago, on this big weekly call, they said, well, what's your plan? I said, I own the building. We're going to finish it with or without historic tax credits. How we would do that, I have no clue. You pull $40 million out of a $230 million budget, That's not something you can plan for, nor is it something I was willing to spend any time and energy on trying to strategize. It's such a big problem, we would just have to stop everything and rethink the entire project. But again, we own it. We're $44 million into it today and counting, so walking away is not an option. You figure it out. But fortunately, we have been told that what will pass through with tax reform grandfathers us in. As long as we're completely finished by Christmas of 2020, we will be able to get the tax credits that we had originally planned on.
Great.
What's that, John? Yeah, that'll mess with your sleep a little bit, yeah.
Do we have any other questions for the applicant? Any comments? Any discussion?
I'm excited. I think it's going to be great.
Do we have someone in the gallery that would like to speak to this? If you could state your name and address for the record.
Steve Sherman, maybe this isn't the, I'm at 117 Park Avenue. Maybe this isn't the day to discuss this. Gary, were you discussing the north skin or what the view on the north side of the parking? Is that part of this conversation?
The north skin, I hope I don't offend anybody. I personally don't like the building. That's why I wanted to knock it down. It's not very attractive to me. And when the National Park Service said you're going to have to keep it, our objective is to clean it and replace the windows that are broken and paint it and make it look as good as you can. I just, again, apologize that I'm not a fan of the look of the building. The National Park Service does not want to see vehicle lights, so inside behind the glass, because we can't remove anything, remember, we'll have concrete barriers. How tall are they?
Required concrete vehicle barriers are 2'9" tall, and then in locations where we need to have guardrail height close to an opening, we'll add on top of that, and that'll contribute to blocking headlights from shining out through the windows on that Park Avenue facade.
Steve, if I understand your question, we can't change the skin of that building, either one of them.
If you could...
All the windows remain. On the 57 building, again, a lot of people, unless you look at it close, you don't see a difference. But there's a significant design difference in the 72 on the east and the 57. The 57 actually has some very small windows below each main window on the floor that open up. We'll open those a little bit and fix them, but from the skin standpoint, from the windows, we're not allowed to change any of that at all.
So there's not going to be any openings. It's not going to be an open garage. No, thank you.
All of the openings that we will either keep or add all happen on the alley side, on the south side. Nothing on the north. That make sense?
It makes sense. I was just wondering if you could get trees big enough to cover that building.
Again, I'll make somebody mad if I talk too much about the process that got us here, but it is what it is. The National Park Service said, if you want $40 million, you'll do what we say. And I said, yes, ma'am.
So my understanding with the north facades is that they're not going to be modified. What's there is going to be restored, and the only real modification is on the 1957 portion where the small operable windows will be tack welded open.
Yes.
Is that these right here? Are these
Yes,
small
those small ones right there.
Okay.
I don't remember the angle. It's maybe 20 degrees. It's not much, but it gives us that final piece to break that 50% by cracking those a little bit.
And that will be every single window. So it will be consistent across the facade.
Yes.
On the third floor, we actually will have a strip of office space facing out to Park Avenue. The instruction from National Park Service is that when we're looking from the street, that needs to look like an office building still. And so on that floor, those windows, they'll still be operable, but it'll be up to the tenants inside on whether they have them open or not. But fourth floor and above, yeah, those will be tack welded open. And they're little hopper windows.
Could you speak to the plans for the ground level of this area?
It's a good question. So right now, it's retail space, and conceptually for us, it's white box retail space. Now, again, National Park Service they won't give tax credits on unfinished space. So the design has finishes in these retail spaces, and this is a great photograph to look at. Right behind there will be a retail space, and it'll be finished, but it'll be really, Spartan finishes, because we expect that before we're finished with the tower, that we'll have tenants in there that are doing their own build-out.
I wish I had a picture as part of this. It's not part of the scope, so I didn't think about putting it in, but everybody's familiar with the concourse as it runs through First National. One of the things that will be different here, you'll be able to see completely through the first floor of this when we're finished. The concourse, we are opening up as a two-story space. It's all glass, about $2 million of white marble will go in the first two floors. So where you see concourse now, it's probably the most dramatic space that we're building, including the 31 tower, will be in the concourse that we hope to rebrand as the gallery. There's a grand staircase with 20-foot glass pictures embedded on the back of glass that light up, telling the history of the bank and the building, and we think it's something that'll be pretty spectacular. So when you say it's going to be retail space, right now you look at it and go, why would anyone want to ever go in that space? When we're done with it, we think there'll be plenty of people who would love to be a part of it. My vision has always been that we'll have tables and chairs all the way down Park Avenue with restaurants and seating and activity, which is why I wasn't willing to bring parking off of Park.
Well, I think this is a wonderful project, and really admire the effort to take on something like this. This is especially the original building is an icon for Oklahoma City, and so to see it get renovated and repurposed, I think, is a huge plus for downtown Oklahoma City. I think logistically, bringing the parking off of Broadway makes more sense than Park. You've got the median at Broadway, so you're restricting the traffic flow to one way versus...
We've had several meetings with Mike Clark and at the city and traffic management, and so yeah, the park, obviously it'll still be one way on each side on Broadway, and we'll add a curb cut that allows people to go from the northbound Broadway across into the parking entry, and also to facilitate our deliveries into the alley.
Okay. So there will be a curb cut through that median?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Well, that kind of kills my point about that, but again, I appreciate the project. I appreciate the new design of the tower and how it represents more of a contextual office tower in its appearance than a parking garage or a parking garage ramp in itself. So appreciate that effort. Do we have any other comments, discussion, questions?
I'm ready to make a motion. I echo what our chairman said, Gary. I think the entire city is rooting for you on this deal, and everyone has a special place in their heart for the First National Center. So I'm delighted to make a recommendation to approve the application on the basis the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in sections C and D of the staff report, with the condition that you submit, the applicant submit a revised.
Oh, yeah. We don't need the condition.
You what?
We don't need the condition anymore.
Done.
Okay.
That was a Ainsworth Harding motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Application is approved. Thank you. Okay, we have a couple items on the agenda for other business. So we'll start with item 7A.
I just let him, yeah.
Good morning. My name's J.J. Chambliss. I'm with the Development Services Department, and we are processing an amendment to the zoning ordinance to address Airbnbs. And this is a fairly new but growing trend in the hospitality industry. And the way it works is a homeowner registers with a website and offers a bedroom or a number of bedrooms, or in many cases the entire home, for overnight or short-term lodging. And what we attempt to do with the ordinance is we don't have anything that addresses this in the code right now, so we're creating a definition or a use unit in the zoning code, and we're attaching conditions to that use unit. The conditions would be that the rental could not exceed 30 days. If you exceed 4 bedrooms for rent, that would kick in fire and building codes that exceed that of standard single family. The owner must obtain a license. We have a companion ordinance to this that's creating a license procedure so we can get these licensed, and that all the applicable fees and taxes are collected. That's an effort to collect the required city's hotel motel tax. The council entered into agreement with Airbnb in August to collect and remit those taxes to the city, but that's just one. There are others other than Airbnb and individuals that are doing this as well. The reason I'm here, we intend to make this a conditional use, which means if you meet these conditions, you're eligible to do home sharing in any zoning district that allows single-family residential. So that affects the city's 3 downtown design districts. So what we're asking for is a recommendation from you on the ordinance that we can take back to the Planning Commission, communicate that to them, and ultimately on to the City Council.
How does this compare to other cities? Can you speak to that, how it compares to other city ordinance, how they handle it from an ordinance standpoint?
Susan, did we look at that?
I don't know if we looked as far as the zoning. There was a lot of ordinances that were regulating it, more on the licensing side. So we looked at those. I can't recall on the zoning. A lot of them may allow them in, other areas, or they may allow more than single family, just kind of depends.
Could you speak to the licensing process as far as conditions or what that application process might look like?
Legal really did that, the licensing portion of the ordinance.
Did, and I did not bring a copy of that ordinance with me, but it had to do more with they were going to fill out an application, they would have to verification that they would have to sign that they met certain building and fire codes.
At the license stage is where we would review it for the zoning compliance. We would have to sign off on the license verification.
I can't recall a lot of other licensing. I just have to look at the ordinance. I didn't bring it with me. I'm sorry.
Has this been reviewed by any of the other design districts?
It's been to Bricktown and HP. It's going to go back to HP. I did a presentation at HP. They wanted some time to think about it. It's going back to them after it goes to the other design committees. I went to Bricktown last week. They were supportive.
Yeah, and it's going to go to River in a couple of weeks and Urban Design Commission in about a month.
Has there been any consideration about how this would affect parking for the different structures?
For parking,
Parking. Is there anything that's been looked at with respect to how?
parking wasn't a consideration. Of course, in downtown districts, parking is not a requirement. But we had to weigh that against, like in a residential area, someone tearing up their front yard to put in parking. We didn't want that either. So we're hoping that just the parking would take care of itself.
I have a comment. I live in Heritage Hills, and this kind of came out of the blue. And so it seems to me that there's some fairly far-reaching consequences in some of these neighborhoods. And since I live in Heritage Hills, I'm thinking of me. And there are several large houses in Heritage Hills right now that a couple of them have absentee owners that are 7,000-foot plus houses. And I guess my concern is to see these things, if they can't sell them, turn them into basically a mini lodging thing. And we've labored for many years in Heritage Hills and Mesta and other neighborhoods to try to maintain the integrity of those. So my concern is, rather than, I appreciate going through these committees, but I think that the neighborhoods should be engaged in some kind of public process, whether it's the urban neighbors downtown, Mesta Park, Heritage Hills, or any other neighborhood associations in the city that this might impact. I guess my concern is the unintended consequence. And so before I could approve or make a recommendation on this thing, I would like to see this thing tabled for a while and these neighborhoods engaged to see and studied before we move forward on that. That's my comment.
Well, as Chuck's neighbor, my read on this is actually it's a step that would help prevent, because right now there's nothing, right? Right now somebody could have an Airbnb tenant for
They are.
months.
We're trying to get a handle.
So
on
this is actually something that
any that
helps
are already
put a
existing.
lid on that a little bit. So, but I don't disagree with the sentiment that it should be shared with the neighborhoods. My read on it is actually something that would help prevent indefinite, Airbnb stays or using a residence as a hotel.
Has there been any public engagement with this proposal? Any forums or?
None other than these public hearings.
Not to this point. There obviously will be when it gets to city council and planning commission.
Is there anything in the process where, I guess to Chuck's point, a neighborhood could have an overlay or present an overlay in which this simply was not allowed, or licenses were not permitted?
Could it be a part of their restrictive
Certainly,
covenants?
That's the reason we're taking it to each of these committees. They can certainly make that recommendation. Like I say, we're going back to HP. They want some time to think about it, and that could be their recommendation, that they be pulled out of the
As an
ordinance.
example, right now, my understanding is that many of the homes in my neighborhood have detached garages, sometimes quarters on top. And I think there's a restriction in place that currently exists that unless it's a family member, or there may be a couple of more exceptions, that you can't rent those out for commercial purposes. And so I think that kind of opening the door on this could say, yeah, it's okay.
I think on the, if you want, I can go get a copy of that ordinance, but I think on the licensing part of it, it has to be within the single-family dwelling. It can't be like, in a trailer or in your backyard or anything like that.
Well,
Attached.
Chuck, to Nathaniel's point, right now there is no regulation, right? And so I think people can do what they want right now, and it sounds like this might be a framework in place to start to regulate it, or a framework in place that neighborhoods could jump on and take more action to regulate it.
My only point is that I think it needs more study. I'm not saying it's good, bad, or indifferent. It could be great. But I think that it needs some study and conversation by the different neighborhoods before we wade into this thing and then have a big backlash or have some areas that could be abused.
Yeah, I just want to point out the committee is being asked to make a recommendation on how it affects their design review district. So like HP is having hearings about Heritage Hills, Mesta, Urban Design Commission will have the hearing about Cottage District. So I just want to, I mean, you're being asked to review how this affects this design district.
I don't see it that it matters what design district it is, that all the design districts and whoever lives there should have some input into this decision, is all I'm saying. So I guess I'm speaking for whatever district I represent.
Do we have any more discussion? Any questions? Thoughts?
You could make a recommendation to approve it. You could make a recommendation to not approve it. You could make a recommendation that it be further studied. You could vote to take no action. But we need to do something. One of those things.
Okay, I'll make a motion. I would make a motion to not make a recommendation to approve this pending meetings with any interested group in neighborhoods or whatever for comments before this thing is moved forward.
So is that a clarification to, I think, Chuck, if we could clarify, it seems like we would either make a recommendation not to approve it or not take any action.
Yeah, I make a motion that we not take any action pending this being meetings with interested neighborhood groups or in an open meeting situation for any interested parties that would like to have any input on this.
You could indefinitely continue it until you have your studies and then put it back on.
I'm not making a recommendation it be denied. I'm making a recommendation that it be continued until any interested groups can have input into the proposed code.
That was a Ainsworth-Scorthon motion. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you.
We do have two other items under other business on the agenda. Item 7B will be, I think the recommended plan is to continue this to next month's meeting.
All right, Betsy couldn't be here.
But we do need to make a official motion to continue that.
I'll move to continue.
Second.
As a Black-Kriegel motion, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Moving on to item 7C on the agenda, listed as to elect a Downtown Design Review Committee member to serve on Urban Design Commission.
Yes, most of you should be aware that one member of DDRC also serves on the Urban Design Commission. The first and only person to ever do that was Betsy. Now that she is no longer a member of DDRC, she is no longer a member of UDC. This will be the first test of how we replace her. We're asking the committee to recommend one of its members, and we will recommend that person to the mayor, who will put forth that person as filling the Urban Design Commission slot. There are no other criteria for who could fill that position. It would be helpful, potentially helpful, if it were an architect, because it's difficult. 2 architects are required on UDC, and it's difficult to fill them because there's also a large property owner tenant requirement. So it's hard to find architects who meet both of those. Also, it's probably not Corey, because somebody else from his firm already serves on UDC. It may not, I don't want to speak for Connie. Connie may term out sooner than later, but you ready to? Okay, and real quick, and Deborah, your new committee member who couldn't be at this meeting, she cannot serve because she has another standing commitment for the meeting time.
Okay, I'm ready to make a motion. I make a motion that Anthony Blatt be designated to serve in the Downtown Design Review Committee.
Second.
Can you tell me the meeting dates?
It is generally the 4th Wednesday at 3. So it is, of all the committees, it's most affected by holiday schedules. So we'll send you the schedule.
Tony, how's that sound?
No exception.
So, it's been presented as a motion. That's correct? Okay. So that was a Ainsworth-Kriegel motion. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Congrats, Tony. That concludes other business. Moving on to communications. Is there anything on the administrative approval report that needs discussion or comments from staff? Do we have any other comments from committee members? I'd like to wish everyone a very happy holiday and a happy new year. And
I should have said, we have a meeting in January.
You have a
And
meeting?
it's got several items on the agenda. It should be very interesting, some new projects. I think you guys will enjoy the meeting.
the next meeting is Thursday, January 18th, 2018. Meeting adjourned.